am so excited to be able to read the bio and share a bit about Nyanza Shaw. You all ready to hear about her? Yes. Nyanza Shaw is an accomplished attorney and an executive of over 25 years of experience in the creative industries. Known for her keen industry insight and unwavering commitment to client interests, Nyanza has earned a reputation as a trusted advisor. Previously, as Executive Vice President of Scripted Business and Legal Affairs for Fremantle Media, Nyanza oversaw the deal-making of the development, production, and financing for Fremantle's US scripted series and new media content, and worked with Fremantle's international companies to develop and advise on deal structures and best practices. As founder and principal attorney of Shaw Esquire, she represents a diverse clientele in the entertainment and media industries. Beyond her professional endeavors, and I asked her for a fun fact, she told me she mentors 47 people. 47. Excellent. Beyond her professional endeavors, Nyanza is committed to service and making an impact in the community through mentorship and inspiring the next generation. She is the past president of the John M. Langston Bar Association and serves on the Western Region Board of Directors for Step Up and the Board of Directors of the Library Foundation of Los Angeles. I bring to you Nyanza Shaw.
Now, let me clarify one thing. 47, first of all, is an estimate. It might be higher. And two, to Tamla's point earlier, mentoring is not about being committed for 6 months or 9 months or all the other things. Last week, 3 different students reached out to me who had graduated from law school earlier this year and are waiting for their bar results, and called and asked me for advice about what the status of the industry is and what they can do to look for jobs and all of those things. So, you know, it ranges from that, where I can just have a conversation and really be encouraging and inspiring to the next generation. And it also includes some of my friends who are here who I mentor even when they don't want me to mentor them. I'm super excited to be here, and even more so, just so inspired by both of the panels this morning. I have the distinct pleasure, and it's funny when I was sitting thinking about it, is my life is very much this dichotomy where I've had my own business for 20-something years, again, starting when I was 12, because we all started when we were but also have worked in big corporations and worked for big companies and et cetera. And again, I was reflecting, it's so funny, I was like, oh, this is like my younger life, because when I was little, I went from public school, private school, private school, public school, public law school, private undergrad. And so I've always been able to kind of navigate these spaces, and wanting to be able to come and share with you guys today a little bit about how I think we can shift our mindset about how we innovate, how we elevate, how we move up in the spaces that we're in. So again, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Tamala. Obviously, thank you to the boards of both the Chamber in Redondo and Manhattan Beach for having me. And again, I think it's just a matter of figuring out for each of us what it is that's going to help elevate us to the next level. And I know earlier we asked, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, but I also want to know how many people are executives and working for someone else? You just raise your hand. And how many are kind of entry level or just starting a new business? How many folks are more mid-level, figuring things out?
Always figuring things out.
Yeah, I'm always senior level and still figuring things out.
Yeah,
So I grew up in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and we didn't have a lot, we had enough. One of the things that was great is that I had an amazing mother who was very affirming and supportive and all of the things, and so I was raised with a lot of confidence. Like people say I'm a little overconfident today, but whatever. What I realized in going out of the house is, one, sometimes your mother's biased, so of course she thinks you're the smartest, bestest, cutest, greatest thing on earth. And when you go out in the world, you still face the same doubts relative to what your self-worth is, right? Because there's a difference between your confidence, which is more about sometimes external, sometimes superficial idea of how you feel, versus your self-worth, which is more about internally what you value as yourself, how you think other people value you, how other people perceive you. And so we have to be out in the world and be navigating the spaces that we're in, approaching it in both ways, right? And so how many people in here think they're pretty confident, accomplish some things? By the way, I expect everybody to raise their hand. And how many of you have been in rooms where you felt like you weren't sure you belonged, or you weren't sure why you were there? Again, I expect everybody to raise their hand. I think we've all been there, right? And so one of the things, again, about shifting your mindset is about thinking about not only why you belong in the room, how you show up in the room, and how you protect your space once you're in the room. Part of it is kind of simple, but we get in our own way about it, right? So there's this concept of inductive reasoning. Again, I'm a lawyer, so bear with me. It's about how you put elements together to come to a conclusion which changes a narrative. So when you're in a room and you're thinking, maybe I don't belong there, why am I here? I'm trying to figure things out. I like to use inductive reasoning and think, okay, there's certain elements though. I know I did the work. I know I did great work. I know my stuff. I look good. Y'all look good. And so why would I not be in the room, right? It's a simple reframe of thinking about, yes, we're always going to have those doubts. We're always going to be thinking about, are we worthy? Are we enough? Great reminder. We're driving here down Ripley, where the art is on the wall. Literally this morning, there's a big old sign that says, "You are enough." I was like, oh, I don't got to talk about that. They make a big sign. Like, don't we all know that? So again, in this mind shift, it's an idea of figuring out, where do these sources of doubt come from? And how can we address them, change them, reframe the narrative so that we are showing up in places and embracing the power of our presence. Each and every one of us has our own power. Each and every one of us does something great. Yes, it sounds cliche, but your special power is you. And we have to embrace that, even when both the outside world is sometimes questioning that, and more importantly, our internal voices question that, right? And so as women, even as little girls, we're like, girls don't do this, and girls can't do that, and you're not allowed to do this, and there seems to be a lot of restrictions placed on us. Even as adults, there are certain things that they say women can't do, shouldn't do, by the way, haven't done. And one of the things in that way that we were reminded of this week is that in Kama's speech, one of the things that resonated in being prepared for today was this idea that don't ever listen to someone tell you that something can't be done because it's never been done before, right? It's not impossible. Right. And that's not a political narrative, that's just a affirmation of self-worth. All of you, and especially listening to the entrepreneurs, and again, y'all are in my heart, because I've been an entrepreneur so long, this idea of, I'm going to start an architecture firm, I'm going to start a retail business. It's not that no one's ever done it before, but you've never done it before. And so having mentors, having resources, having the chamber, all of those things are great to have, but at the same time, if you don't believe that you can do it, Why would you think you can do it? And sometimes even in that space, when people tell you that you can do it, you still don't believe that you can do it. And so we have to, again, keep reminding ourselves, having this refrain of understanding how powerful we are, but also how powerful the messages and narratives that we tell ourselves are and how to overcome them, right? So another thing that very, very much leans into the doubts that we have is relative to the fact that a lot of us may have at some point been people pleasers. Women are traditionally taught to kind of take care of everybody else first. We have this idea that we can't say no, so we say yes a lot of the time because we don't want somebody to, well, how are they going to think of me? Or I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I don't want to feel like I'm not doing enough, or all of those things. In that same way, when you're in spaces and understanding what your value is, and I'll talk more about this, is an idea of balancing, and for me it goes beyond boundaries. It's more about understanding what your value is, and so that you can then attest what you're willing to do and not willing to do to build your business, right? Or to move up in a company, or to elevate your role. And so part of it is, again, believing it from jump, reminding yourself again and again that you are enough, that you do belong, that it is something that is possible. And then, what is the action? What are the tools that you use to then build that? To build upon the foundation of, even if it's every day, convincing yourself of what that value is. I am, as Latrice mentioned, I am a former president of John M. Langston Bar Association, and I've served in many roles on that board, including being involved in the scholarship committee. It's my favorite and most fulfilling thing to do on that board because we get dozens of applications from diverse law students from USC, UCLA, all the law students in the area. And when I tell you, these law students are phenomenal. We're reading these applications, some of them are making us cry, and I'm like, who has the time to do it? Like, I'm a grown-up, I don't have the time to do all the things that some of these students are doing. They're volunteering, they're active in their communities, they're kicking butt at school, they're doing all of these things. And on top of that, they've all dealt with a lot of challenges. We've had students that have been homeless, students that are either have lost their parents when they were younger and are taking care of their elderly parents now. They've had financial challenges. And so when we're reading these applications, we then narrow down, they're all scored, we narrow them down, and a select few are invited in for in-person interviews. And so when they come in for the in-person interviews, again, we've already made it this far, you've made it to law school, you've already impressed the heck out of the committee, you're now literally in the room with 4 or 5 people for this interview. And many of them still doubt that they deserve to be there. I'm going to share a somewhat unpopular opinion, but I'm a rebel and I like being unpopular sometimes. I don't believe in imposter syndrome. And not in the way that is used to like label people and or like make us feel that we're less than. I get it. There's always going to be rooms, as we said earlier. As confident as you are, you can be in a room and maybe feel a little nervous, maybe feel a little uncomfortable, maybe you feel like you don't belong or you aren't sure why you're there. But, because I'm also literal, to be an imposter means you're pretending to be someone else in a deceitful and fraudulent way. When you're in the room and you're nervous and you're unsure and etc., you're not being an imposter. You're just there in the room as your authentic self with your insecurities too, which is fine. And it's interesting, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, is like, usually when we have that thought and we get in the room, don't you realize that you're like sometimes more qualified and more smart? You're intimidated by. Like, why is that afraid to go? I don't really know. Don't want again, it's this reframe of thinking about what your value is, what your worthiness is, whether or not you belong. It doesn't go away, but I think getting away from this idea of labeling it that rather than saying, like, I can be strong and confident and positive, and of course, be somewhat uncomfortable to walk into a room when I don't know anybody. That's a natural feeling, you know, of unease. It doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you less confident, it doesn't make you less worthy, it doesn't mean you don't deserve to be in the room. And like I said, usually once you get in the room, you realize people are not as smart as they think. Definitely not. They usually question that, like, how did you get this job? And now I'm confused. I was nervous and uncomfortable, now I'm just confused and perplexed. And maybe I shouldn't be here, right? So that then goes to this other idea where some of our self-doubt, especially when you get to a certain level in your profession, is that you're the first or the only, right? And that can be uncomfortable. When I was at Fremantle, I was on the executive board, and it was 17 senior executives, including the CEO and COO, who happened to be women. And then it was mainly white and my little brown face. And I had to remind myself in that space, as we do sometimes, where it's like, again, when you have these feelings of doubt and you have these feelings of unease, there's always a way to reframe. And the way that I reframe in those spaces is to think, well, before I got in this room, it was filled with a group of people that have very similar perspectives, similar backgrounds. It was kind of boring. It was very homogenous. If you're in that room and you're the person that's different than anybody else, you're actually adding the most value because you're bringing a new perspective. You're bringing a new voice. You're infusing a new energy. You're adding spice. And it's okay to be spicy. If you don't want to be spicy, you can be like the extra little pinch of salt that gives you a flavor. You gotta be all the spice all the time. You can determine what spice level you want to bring to the table. But again, it's important to reframe. Think about every day, all day, outside, internally, we're getting these messages that challenge and or attack how we feel about the value of ourselves. What is our self-worth? What is our self-value? And even the most confident folks, it's like, okay, what do I need to do today to think differently about how I'm approaching something, how, again, I'm showing up in the room, and how I'm going to be in that room. So we all want to elevate in some way, whether it's building a business, expanding your business, continuing to accomplish, achieve the things that you want to achieve in this world. And when you're facing these things, you want to think about, well, how do I communicate that? And how do I protect? Once in my head, I'm feeling like I believe, I'm feeling like I'm belonging, but is everybody else getting this message? When I'm like, my internal cheerleader is going off. So how do you express that? I think a lot of us tend to, again, traditionally as people pleaser, traditionally as women who want to show up and take care of everyone else, we have a tendency to say yes. Say yes a lot. Say yes to a lot of stuff, say yes to a lot of people, say yes to things that take up our time. We overextend ourselves by just saying yes. And so today, again, I want to give you another reframe, which I lean into a lot. It's the luxury of saying no. One, it's okay to say no. And that whole like no is a sentence thing, absolutely true. I think sometimes in business where we get it confused is that we think if we're saying no, that we're not being a team player, or we're not stepping up, or we're not going above and beyond. No. We're just doing too much and overextending ourselves and saying yes to too many things, and then irritated about it, and out with our girls having drinks complaining about it, and all that. The idea that there's a luxury of saying no is that we actually have a choice. And if you're looking to elevate, you have to think about what are the things I'm willing to do and what are the things I'm not willing to do to get there. So there's levels to that, right? Some of it is you have to let people go. You have to let some of these internal thoughts and negativity go. What is it that you're letting go of? What is it that you're saying no to? And some of it is like, literally like, no, I'm not doing that. But you have to remind yourself that you do have the luxury of saying no. And so there's this quote where it's like, no, your yes doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to say no. Because if you're just that agreeable person and you're saying yes all the time, I hate to break it to you, but nobody's going to respect you. Because they don't know where your line is. They don't know what you really stand for. They don't really know what you value, because you're not saying, as kids say, I'm standing on business that I'm only going to do this. In this role, whether it's to a boss, whether it's to a team member, again, sometimes to a client, to a customer. I know when I was building my business, again, I had my own law firm practice for a long time. And especially when you're building your business, or especially when you're coming up in a company and you want to get ahead and you want to say yes to all the things and etc. But what I learned was that there'd be clients that would come and I'd say, this is my rate. And they're like, well, blah, 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 and I probably needed the money, probably needed the client, and I had to remind myself, that's not something I'm willing to do. So I can say no to that client. You know what happened every single freaking time? Literally the next day a client will call me and be like, I want to pay double your rate, and I want you to do all these things, and do it like immediately. Because not only is it a delineation, not only is it a decision, not only is it a luxury, but it's just energy. And so the same way that, again, we're thinking about boundaries, but it's really about setting a certain standard for yourself. Being able to create the type of energy that you want, and as soon as you say no to certain things, all the things that you really want to say yes to show up literally immediately. If I just sat here today and told you guys how many other examples of that I have, we would be here till the Super Bowl run. Now, of course, in that moment, I'm like freaking out. I'm just trying to build my practice. And do I say yes? This is the evolved Nyanza that I'm now sharing with you. And even in the evolved state, still have the same doubts that many of you have, as accomplished, achieved, and all of the things that we are. Which is why I think it is so important to remind women, especially women in business, that it is, again, it's okay to say no. Really think about, what is it that you want to do? And is that other thing not in line with that? So when a boss comes and asks you, it's like, oh, you want me to do this? And yeah, I'm willing to go above and beyond. I'm willing to be a team player, but I'm not going to compromise myself. I'm not going to compromise my values. I'm not going to compromise my goals. Sometimes this may be, I'm not going to compromise my family. Like, well, today I have to leave at 4 o'clock because my kid has this, or I need to go do this because I'm supporting something else. Again, it's kind of like in the instance of saying no to a client. By the way, side note, also, the few times when I accepted those clients, it stressed me the heck out. The reason I learned to say no. So when you're thinking again about like, I'm going to create this standard for myself, people then respect that, they see what you want to do. In your own business, in working for other people, they're going to respect that because they know where you stand. This week, I watched the Martha Stewart documentary on Netflix. It's amazing. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. If you really want to know about some boss stuff, you watch the Martha Stewart documentary. Been a fan, super impressed. But the fact is that Martha was the first self-made female billionaire in 1999. Not 2019, not even 2009. In 1999, she built a $1 billion company. And what some of you may already know, but we'll learn more when you go home and watch this dang documentary, is that absolutely Martha's success was based on the fact that she was uncompromising. She's out shopping her magazine. I'm not going to spoil anything for y'all. She's out shopping her magazine to publishers, and one publisher was like, oh, we only can do this. Martha said, nope. Went to the next publisher. Goes to the next publisher, they're like, well, we don't know, like a magazine about living and housekeeping. Martha said, nah. Went to the next publisher until she was given the opportunity to do the magazine in the way that she wanted to do without compromising the vision for what she wanted to do. And that was the foundation of building a $1 billion company. The other side of that, of course, is that, again, some of you know that she's sometimes perceived as like me and her bossy or whatever. But when you watch it and you see her express her intentions and what was behind it, you have to understand, like, there's no way you're going to become the most successful female entrepreneur in history by not having some standards and some boundaries and saying no. That would have literally been impossible. And it's also unfortunate that in certain instances, especially with women, when we take a stand and say no, in many different levels, that we are seen as difficult. Rather than being seen as like, no, I'm just focused and intentional. And that ain't part of what I'm trying to do. So that's why I'm saying no. And so in thinking about that, it's like, okay, well then there's a way to say no. How do you say no? I mean, I'm probably more in the line of like Martha Stewart and mean and bossy, so I just say no. But I'm here to encourage and inspire the rest of you. So y'all can be better than me and Martha, okay? So for you, be conscientious. Be intentional. That doesn't mean you have to justify it. Again, no is still a sentence. No, period. But there is a way to think about, in all instances, how we communicate, right? Because that's another big part of how we elevate in business, how we grow our business. How are we communicating to the people that we work for, the people that work for us, the people that we want to have as customers, the people that we want to have as clients? So it's not necessarily, again, going out and saying, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to be a team player, no, it's just like, I'm going to be clear about what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And then in communicating that, again, being clear, being intentional, being conscientious, especially about the audience, right? Everybody's heard of this term, code switching. Yeah. it's interesting because in certain environments, there's this idea that, you know, in certain communities, you speak very informally and colloquial with your friends, and then you show up at work, and it's like, hi, how are you? And you change your tone and you're more formal. As you guys probably can see, this is me all the time. So I don't do much of that. However, I do feel like there is a way in which we all code switch all day, every day. The way I speak to my friends is a little different than the way I speak to clients, which is a little different than the way I may speak to another attorney if I'm advocating for my client, which is a different way that I'm speaking to a potential client. It is about intonation. It is about your staccato. It is about, even sometimes outside of tone and presentation, it's the messaging. What are you even trying to say? What are you trying to convey also changes how we communicate it. And so those are all the factors that you think about in when you want to say no, how you communicate your no. It's thoughtful. It's strategic. It's intentional. Again, that's what brings the respect factor. That is what brings the results that you want. And that is what helps you elevate, because everybody knows where you stand. You're going to attract the clients, you're going to attract the new business, you're going to attract the promotion, all of those things based on, by the way, basic interpersonal skills, right? Like, we all know how to communicate. You just have to think about when we're in a room, who we're talking to, how we speak to them. Again, side note, also teaches people how to speak to you when you do that, right? Because you want to be respectful. You're putting it out in the air. And in doing that, you also then can recognize that there's continuing to be this messaging that you're putting out there that people see, people feel, there's an energy shift that really demonstrates, oh, this person understands their own value and worth. Because you only can do that, as I said from the beginning, you can't get to that point unless you believe and you feel like you belong. And as many times as you have to remind yourself of it, hey, I'll remind you guys, you're all enough. You're all absolutely meant to be here today. And that next thing that you're seeking, you know, maybe it's a meme on Instagram, but you're probably already all overqualified for. You know, next time you like scroll through the meme, take it in. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of overqualified for that. I do know that thing. And the other side of that is if when someone does approach you in a way that you feel is undermining your value or undermining your worth, or feel is going to compromise who you are, who you want to be, even the direction that you're going, right? Like driving on the freeway, there's reasons there's like lines on the road to keep you in a direction, keep you from veering off. That's also part of the luxury of saying no. I'm not taking this exit, I'm not taking this exit, I'm not taking this exit, because I know my destination. In that way, yeah, it is kind of important to stay in your lane, because you don't want to veer too far off. And reminder, not staying in your lane like, no, I'm just doing this. No, I can't go above and beyond. No, I'm not willing to be a team player. But the lane that, hey, yellow brick road, I know you are leading to the Wizard of Oz. As we know, Dorothy had a lot of distractions. And them shoes. So, along with that idea, again, is thinking about saying no, how you say no, how you build that up, and not being afraid to do that, releasing kind of the doubts, and understanding that once you say no, you can at least clearly embrace the yeses. Very simple. You know what you're not willing to do, you know what you also are willing to do. And you express that and communicate that in the same way. Be intentional, be respectful, be conscientious about how you're communicating. The next piece of it is, which we've talked a lot about today, which I think is so awesome, is who are you networking with? Who are you connecting with? One of the things that I'm talking to people and giving them business advice, I do some business consulting, and it is where it's like, oh, well, some folks are pretty clear about what they want to do, and others are like, well, I'm kind of like this, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, but if you're connecting with someone, you have to be clear about that. Because when you have all these amazing, beautiful women as resources, you have two extended groups of folks, even through the chambers, that can be resources. You have to tell them exactly what you're looking for and want. So if I meet you and you say, hey, Nyanza, I'm interested in X. I'm old school, I have a Rolodex in my brain. And it's like, oh, I might have someone that I can connect you with, or I can help you, point you in the right direction, right? That clarity is what helps you move forward, because you're messaging that out to folks, and then people can take that to that next step. Hey, I need funding for my company. Please don't ask me that you want funding for your company, but you don't know how much funding you need. Right, Sheila? I need to know that. I mean, I work in the entertainment business, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I need funding for a film. Well, shoot, do you need $3 million? Do you need $20 million? Like, be specific. In the same way that you're saying no, you have to be able to clearly express what it is that you do want to do, what it is that you do need to elevate. By the way, not good at it, but even expressing what help you need. What do you need help with? These things are going great. I need help with this. I need help with being introduced to this person. I need help being introduced to this company. I need help putting a website together or bringing down a wall. Whatever that is, that's okay also to express, right? Because you're creating your lane, you know what direction you're going in. So tell other people what direction that you're going in, so that we know. Because guess what we want to do? We want to stand on the sidelines and cheer you on. We want to be able to help. I'm sure many of you found, it's like generally, again, just talking to myself, I'll be hesitant about asking for anything from anybody, blah, blah, blah. But usually what I do, it's like 4 or 5 people willing to do more than even what I need. So don't even underestimate that piece, right? The power of your presence and being in the room and believing that you belong in the room, and then expressing what you want to do. And never thinking that it's like too big or too much or beyond Stan Lee, right? Like some of those things you don't even know to ask for. But at least if you're putting it out in the universe and you're expressing that this is the desire, someone might say, oh, it would be a good idea if you also did this other thing. I didn't even think about that. That would be great. Or, nah, I don't want to do that. It's too much. I want to do this only. But at least you have that voice. At least you have that support. At least you have that connection. So vocalize that. In either way, expressing what you're willing to do, expressing what you want to do, expressing what you're dreaming of doing, but also being very, very clear about what the heck we're not going to do to get there. We're all clear about this? So, again, I leave you with this. Please network. Please connect. Please seek out mentorship. Please use your voice. And also just remind yourself that you belong, that you are enough, and continue to remind yourself. One of the best things that I saw in the Olympics over the summer, even though there was a lot of great things, but one thing that very much resonated in my brain relative to today, some of you may have seen it. There was this clip that went around, Simone Biles, arguably the best athlete in the world, the most gold medals, she's the GOAT. And there's this clip of her starting her routine, and she just breathes, and she says to herself, "You got this." Simone Biles has to remind herself that she got this. I encourage all of you to do that every day, every morning, especially when you're feeling uncomfortable, especially when you're doubting yourself, and especially when you're thinking you can't do something that you probably can do, and like I said, are probably overqualified to do. Remind yourself, you got this. So I'm hoping beyond that you take away today that there's some belief or boundary that you've set in your mind that's holding you back, that you're just going to decide to release today. Because why is it holding you back? Why are you questioning it? What is the source of that doubt? How can you reframe it? You know, we're all going to be in the car, driving home, driving back to our offices. It's okay to have like real life, a couple minutes to yourself, music on or off. To remind yourself, think about that, and really implement not only some of the things that I've shared today, but all of the amazing advice that was shared today by the entrepreneur panel, the executive panel. Just there's a lot of amazing information that I hope, again, that you guys take from today, implement, think about, and I like, not in a whatever way, but I have a lot of clients, I have a lot of friends, or they're like down the line later, they'll be like, "Oh, I was in this situation, Nyanza, and I heard you in my head saying, 'You got this.'" I heard you in my head in this meeting like, "I'm gonna tell them no." So I hope, again, that in some way, something I say resonated with you today. There's something amazing that the other women that were on these panels today resonates with you, and that you remember that you are all enough. If you're in the room, you belong in the room. And I want to thank you for affirming that I also belong here with you all. Thank you so much for your attention and engagement. Thank you so much to the Manhattan Beach Chamber. Manhattan Beach Chamber, and obviously the Redondo Beach Chamber. Special shout out to Tamala Lewis, who of course is on both boards. Inviting me to be here today. I know it's difficult to put an event together, especially when it's the inaugural or we haven't done it in a few years and we're trying to get it back on track. So everybody involved in putting this event together is amazing. And most importantly, thank you sponsors. Thank you vendors. I see the value in investing in this connection and network, and will continue to do so. Thank you.
told you you'd be back on that page. So we do have a few more moments, and so does anyone have any questions for Nyanza? Questions?
As I always like to say, my hourly rate is really expensive, so when I'm taking free questions, you should ask.
What would you give as a piece of advice or recommendation on how to balance work life? I think the hustle culture, like for me, joining this industry, my mind was to be the first person there, last one to leave, hardest working person in the room. But as I get older and want to start a family, I realize that like that balance is so important. So what would be your piece of advice to me, a young entrepreneur, the business, wanting to start a family? How do you juggle that? How do you balance it? Is it just, what are your non-negotiables to make it?
I think there's two important things to remember. One is that I'm with you. I'm the hustle culture all day. I'm gonna do all the things. I'm gonna try to do them by myself, all of that. Are we all superwomen? Are we not able to do everything? First is, especially when you're building your business, think about the things that make more sense to delegate out, that you don't like doing. What I've learned is that sometimes the anxiety about doing that one thing that you don't want to do and all the time you spend, again, speaking to myself, I used to hate billing. But I got a bill to send invoices to get money. I'm like, oh, I gotta do billing, da da da. Okay, let me delegate that. I know that I am going to take in much more income and revenue using my time another way versus spending the time doing something I know I don't like doing. And what's very interesting about that, I don't know if I read it in a book, so I don't know, this is not my own concept. However, what they say is, when you're putting off a task that you don't want to do, you're not only wasting the time that it takes the task to do, but it's multiplied by the time it's been in your freaking brain. So it's wasted 3 times as much time than just having somebody else do it. So even as a young entrepreneur, I know there's some things where it's like, I can't afford to do. If it's something that you know you don't want to do, and or accept that you're not even really good at and you want to have it done right, have somebody else do it. Just take it off your plate. Again, helps with the equilibrium, helps with the balance. And then it really does go back to saying no. What are your non-negotiables? Am I going to be just as good and be able to do just as much if I end at 7 rather than 9? Yeah. And it's okay. I don't know, my to-do list is still at my house. I'm here. Like, it's still going to be here. I don't think I'm going to go back and it's going to be gone. I wish, but it's not. So even those times where it's like, hey, I only can do either so much and I need to delegate or have someone else do it, or in this moment, I only can do so much and I have to take some time for myself and come back to it.
Thank you. There's one more on the side.
As small business owners, what are some trends you see coming up for 2025 on how to protect our small businesses, like especially like from like frivolous lawsuits and like especially for a service-based business?
Again, I've had my own service-based business a long time. And so it is about protecting, especially all of your IP, making sure, and I know all the Chamber of Commerce's do this, they can help you in terms of registering your business, registering your IP, all of those things, and making sure those things are protected. And then there's also not fighting certain advances. Like I know in multiple industries, it's like, oh, what about AI? What about these things, and et cetera. Again, I'm a lawyer, so bear with me. I know there's a lot of people that just like filing lawsuits.
Yes.
I don't know why. I'm transactional. I don't believe in litigation, so I don't get it. But I do know that that exists. But if you're protected and you're doing everything that you need to do, that's something that you can lean into, right? And then I think because we are going into a new year, new era, there's a lot of uncertainties. Just thinking about how can you button down what your goals are, what your niche is, what your focus is. I'm anti-jack of all trades. I want to be like really, really good at these 3 or 4 things because I want to be able to, what's your name?
Tiffany.
Tiffany. I want to be able to know that I'm coming to Tiffany for this. And Tiffany is providing a service that I can't get from anybody else. Even if you do something else. I mean, there's other lawyers, none of them do what I do, or do it the way I do it, whatever. So whatever you're doing, Tiffany, lean into making sure that in this new era of business and how we're moving forward, you're protected and you're clear on, you're going to come to me for this service. We're not going to go anywhere.
I'll take one more. Okay.
Yes?
As a small business owner, as I know most of us are, at which point can we start to delegate? I mean, it's more about an expansion. There's a process and there's a point in every business in which we have to expand, we have to hire people. And how do we find those people? How do we find the tribe? Because I know there's a lot of imposter syndromes. You know, you get somebody's resume and it's not necessarily accurate because ChatGPT wrote it. So how do you find genuine people in this world to have work with?
Yeah. 2 things. One, I do think with any entrepreneurial venture, like I'm excited about M is like at this tipping point of like growing the business and maybe leaving her other career. That there's always a tipping point when you know that, right? Where it's like, I'm growing, I'm elevating. I have a lot of conversations with small businesses where, and somebody mentioned this earlier, where you don't think you can afford help, but it's like, okay, but if I pay this person this amount, which can then help me do 3 times more work, you can't afford to pay them, right? Now, how you find those people, I hate to sound redundant, but we have these amazing chambers of commerce, and they're here to support you. They have a great network of people. 99% of any sort of referral base is based on relationships, not a resume from ChatGPT, but a personal reference or a personal recommendation. And like I was saying, mobilize. You're in a room. Tell these people who you're looking for. What do you need help with? And I bet somebody in here is like, oh, I know someone looking for that. So utilize your network. Okay, I think I gotta go.